We're going to unfortunately dive into the shootings that happened this past week. And the first shooting, we got two for y'all. The first shooting is the one that happened in Uvalde, Texas. I think I'm saying that right. I guess let's read the CNN instead of me doing a little summary. I think they got a little summary to begin with. So, with more funerals and visitations scheduled Wednesday for victims of the deadliest U.S. school shooting in nearly 10 years, more changes in authorities' narratives of how the May 24 massacre unfolded in the South Texas city of Uvalde are emerging. The Texas Department of Public Safety, or DPS, now says the door the shooter used. Well, this kind of gives us time. Let's actually, I guess, kind of get into it. So there's this guy. I don't remember his name. I don't care to know his name. 18, had some issues, and one
Salvador.
day, huh?
Something Salvador.
He, 18, lost his, pretty much snapped. He shot his grandmother, took the car, went to a school. And in the process of driving to that school, the grandmother crawled. You said how far she crawled?
Across the street.
Across the
I don't know if
street.
she crawled. I just know she made it across the street.
Well, either way,
and
she
called
made it
the
across the
police.
street from being shot by her grandson to call the police to warn them about him. And he gets to a school, and as CNN's going to get to, there has been a lot of holes in the story and reporting when it comes to the events that played out. So the kid is now going to this school. He somehow gets inside the school. The officers are able to, as they say, secure him in a room. And unfortunately, the room that he was secured in had, 19 kids?
Wait, so him getting into the classroom was them kind of like pincering him into the classroom, or kind
We
of
don't
like
know the
tactically?
specific. We don't know how it specifically played out. We just know that, and it's gonna get to it in here. Is that he got in somehow? Either he was let in, or a door was left unlocked and he propped open, or
that's
that's
been debated.
exactly.
Yeah.
But either way, somehow he got in. How he got into the room, I don't know if they pressured him in there,
Yeah,
or if that was the first room he entered and they just happened to like lock it behind him. Like I
think he went into it. There's no way they would have pressured him into a room with children and like two people
Yeah.
or like two adults. I think he was already in there, and the room was locked from the inside, so the cops couldn't go in. Well, they could have, but like that was the barricade.
But they said they exchanged fire.
Yeah,
Like there was
he was shooting at them, and so this is the timeline I've got. He crashes his car after shooting his grandmother.
Is it confirmed he crashed his
who
car? Because they've been
survives, by the
debating
way.
that too, that he crashed his car. Because they said he crashed his car and got out and started shooting. When they say he didn't crash his car, he just...
Well, the truck I've seen on TV, like the wheels are like flat, like a hover car almost. Like he went into like a
ditch.
a water ditch.
Oh, okay.
He shoots his grandmother, who's survived, by the way, which is crazy. She survived. with
She's
a bullet
actually
head.
alive?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Oh,
she survived
wow.
the
That's what I'm
headshot.
saying. I was like, yeah, she survived. That's what I said. I don't know if she crawled.
I thought you meant like she survived long enough to
Yeah,
No,
I don't know
she's
how he
alive
shot her
today.
or what, but like she got shot in the head and she survived. So
Yep.
I don't know what happened, but it's crazy.
It's God's grace.
He drove off after that. The entire time he was like texting some girl in Germany, and it's good they put up the receipts of like all the messages and stuff like that. And then he cranes the car. Two people at like a morgue come out. He opens fire on the people coming out of the morgue, and they duck for cover. And then he runs to the school, and he's popping like a couple shots off towards the school. This time the officer for the school is not on campus, but he's racing back. And so he stops a man who's actually a teacher that he thinks is the shooter. The kid gets in through some door. Either it was propped open with a rock by a teacher, and I've actually seen teachers do that, so I kind of believed that. Or the new news is that it malfunctioned, and somehow it was opened for him. Then that the rock story was never possible. So anyways, he goes in, he basically goes forward, takes a right, and then goes into like a classroom. And the classroom is one of those classrooms that shares another classroom with it. So
adjoining or
there-
something like that, yeah.
Yeah, like a joint room. So there's two teachers and a bunch of kids, and he just starts, doing what he did. The police officers go in, and they kind of line the hallway, and that's when they're like exchanging fire with him, and they're just kind of sitting in the hallway. After a certain while, the police chief of that department, so keep in mind, school districts in Texas usually have their own police departments, and it's so that they don't have to trade rotations with like beat cops. There's 6 cops, I think, in their police department precinct, and like 1 chief or something. So the chief, after they see the locked door, which is literally he just locked the door, he designates it as a barricade hostage situation. And so all of the guys that show up with like bigger guns and stuff like that, they end up creating a perimeter around the school. And because it's a hostage situation, they don't let anybody in. Here's the fucked up part, and this is where like all the scandals coming out now. That school has counter training for active shooters, and it's basically you run in, you don't stop until the shooter's down. Even if it's like the next person in, you all go single file in, you run and gun, even if the first person in front of you drops until the gunman is down. Because he designated the situation a hostage situation, they didn't follow their training.
That's
And
wild. I didn't know
nobody
that.
nobody went in. What they ended up doing was, because of the hostage situation terminology, they created a perimeter for the guy for an hour to do whatever he wanted to in that classroom. And that's why the body count is so high. And so now, like, there's a bunch of footage of parents screaming at the cops to go in, because there's
Yes.
cops with ARs, and like there's
Yep.
cops with like, you know, like heavy like ballistic shields and stuff like that.
Saw
Like
the
they're
same video.
geared
Yep.
to go in. But it wasn't until an hour after a federal, I think, department or something made a call that
Border Patrol,
overrode
pretty
that.
much.
Yeah, they overrode the police chief, and they went in and they actually, you know, shot the gunman down. And so because of that, like, there was a total fuck up on protocol for them, and their training basically all went out the window. And like the huge thing is, like, they had just trained on how to deal with a shooter, I think, like a week ago, and they didn't even do it when they actually were supposed to. So now the chief of police for that school police precinct, like, he hasn't come out in days, and you know, the people in the city are probably fucking pissed, and they're, you know, he's
Dude, have you seen some of
humiliated
the
and stuff like
interviews of
that.
these cops when some newsman asked them questions? Like, it's crazy how they're trying to get ahead of, how they tried to get ahead of this and frame the narrative. How, like, that's why earlier when I said the word I chose, because that's the word he would use. We secured the target in the classroom. Like, we got him secured. You know, we did that. We were trying to be tactical about this, blah, blah, blah. And then also saying how another video, it's a different interview, I think, where he also said, the reason why they didn't go in because they didn't want to put officers or something along those lines. Officers' lives in danger, and it's like, well, what about the children?
That's the bullshit. That they were supposed to do that.
Exactly.
That's what countermeasures for a school shooter says you have to do. And so that's where a lot of people are calling them cowards, because when it came down to it, they didn't actually do what they were supposed to.
And then there's also been reporting that some of those officers that were there were able to get their kids out of the school.
Oh, I didn't hear about that. I just heard about also like the parents who were just like saying fuck it, and they were trying to charge the perimeter to go
One
in
woman
and get
got
their
arrested.
kids.
I think another dude
Yeah.
got tased or something like that, which is
Yeah, and the
wild.
cops actually kept them out.
Which
And
is
it's actually kind of
wild.
fucked up, because I actually saw a diagram of it, and so it's like the hallway, the room, and then like all the cops were lined in here. And that's the thing that trips me out, though, because you gave him an hour to just do what he wanted. They had to have heard him pop off shots
Right, you just heard
and
the
kids
shots going
screaming
off.
and stuff like
Oh
that. And
my
you can just sit in the
gosh.
hallway and listen to that shit and be like, oh, well, this is what's happening. Like, I don't understand that part. Unless the malice he was going to do initially when he walked into the room, and then and then he never fired again, except to deal with the police. But I'm thinking, like, the entire time he was in there, like, he was doing things, and, you know, you had to have heard the hostages and like people crying and stuff like that. But not only that, there were kids in the actual rooms that were calling 911 with their cell phones, and they were like timelines where they were telling them, we're still alive in here, like, we need help, and we need people to come in and get us.
That's
And
wild, bro.
that information never got relayed, supposedly, to the chief, because
He wasn't
that's
there.
well, I don't know if he was actually there or not. I think he was on site. That information should have told the chief that it's no longer like a barricade hostage situation. They need to break in. They need to go in. And when they did break in, they literally just kicked they just opened the door with the janitor keys, and then they went in and they shot him, because that was the only barricade.
Was the police chief the same guy who said, knowing what we know now, we should have went in?
No, I think that was the DPS director.
Oh, okay, because he was
The
the one
police
who
chief
said,
is literally like the town school district police guy.
oh, okay, got you.
Yeah, and he was like in charge of like U.S. Marshals and Border Patrol. Honestly, I don't think he was anywhere near capable of handling like the caliber of people that were there. If he was, he would have probably sent them in earlier.
All right, before we start diving into this topic, let's talk. Get the other one in here, and then let's get the conversation going, which is the Buffalo shooting. All right, so there was a shooting in Buffalo. Buffalo shooting suspect charged with murder as a hate crime, domestic terrorism. Do you want to give us a little rundown, or do you want me to just read the article?
You probably seen the video. Dude had a chest cam. That's what you want to call it.
First person view.
First person view. He pulls up to the grocery store, shoots one of the workers right outside, walks in, and just immediately starts shooting people. Everybody's on the ground begging. He shoots one guy, reloads his gun right by the guy he shot, then shoots him in the head. Goes through it, Call of Duty style, kills about 10 people.
13 people.
Oh, 13 people. Oh, killed 11 of them. Oh, okay.
11 of them were black. Killed 13, 11 of them were black.
It looked like there was a white lady outside that was working there, but she looked kind of mixed, so he could have fucked up. But to that point, there was a white guy behind the counter that he almost shot, and he pointed the gun at him. The guy said, "Please don't do this." And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry." Turned his gun off of him and then kept it pushing. So to that point, he was probably overzealous and killed a couple people he didn't mean to. But he went to a black neighborhood, and all of them were like, the youngest person he killed was like 35, but she was the youngest by I think 15 to 20 years. Everybody else was 50s and up. So a bunch of elderly people got killed. He has a lot of, I think they said he had a lot of hate propaganda and stuff on his stuff.
Right here in a rambling 180-page document shown online, Gendron declared himself a white supremacist, called his planned rampage terrorism, and expressed desire for it to incite more violence. Yeah, he's getting tried on a hate crime.
He live streamed it.
Yeah,
I didn't know that was
the fact that he live streamed it. That's the crazy part. I mean, you said it. He had cameras basically.
Yeah, dude, that video.
He got a couple minutes off before they finally took it down.
Yeah. To get into the conversation. So because these past weeks there have been some shootings, I guess the first question to get into this is people want to stop this. People want to do their best to, I guess, prevent, if not prevent, what can we do to decrease the propensity, the frequency of these shooting incidents, be it school or public mass shootings. And right now, there's been two big arguments that have been circling the internet. One is the old time phrase, get rid of guns. That's the extreme argument. I'm not saying that's hype, but to get the extreme point so we can balance the other side is just get rid of guns. We got to get rid of guns. And then the other side has been arguing for security, either armed teachers or get security guards or armed guards at schools or just, I guess, places in general, just security in general. So
I wouldn't say that's the balance of that argument. I would say if we're going to call one side says get rid of guns,
okay, then
the other side would be we have to protect our right to have guns. That would be more of the argument of, I guess not the solution for the school.
But that's what I'm trying to keep it to the solution, though, because the point of banning guns is the solution is no one will have guns to do some kind of shooting. But you can't say that.
So then I guess the opposite would be give the people more guns, give the security more guns.
Well, technically speaking, I guess you could simplify it to that. Give more guns. Like what
I
you
mean,
want
trying to
is
simplify is what I'm saying.
Give more guns. Put more guns. Put more guns in schools, but have those guns be on our side.
Our people.
Exactly, our people. I would say that.
Okay.
I agree to that. So I guess to put out into question is to get a conversation going. What do you think is if you agree with either extreme ban on guns or the extreme put more guns in hands, but the right hands, or do you think there's somewhere along the middle, somewhere towards ban and somewhere towards more guns? Like what do you think is a solution to this, in your opinions?
I think the conversation we have about it is normally about the extremes, and I don't even need to regurgitate all that shit.
That's why I try to enter it that way, because you're right.
But like, besides that point, the media actually perpetuates the argument as a battle between two extremes. But if you ask most people are pro stricter or more tedious background checks and more doing more research before giving people guns. Most people are okay with that. Most people are okay with you needing certain certifications or certain to have guns. The argument is getting rid of the guns completely, which is impossible, or becoming more proficient and more secure or whatever by adding guns or being better armed to defend an attack. And so I think it's both. I think you, on one end, do what you need to do. I think on one end you do what you need to do as far as background checks, as far as like this guy. Social media checks should probably be done as far as I don't know how you go about doing that, but something with their social media as far as owning you know what I'm saying, if anything that's flagged or whatever. Or if you want a gun, you might require a psychological screening of some sort, a light, whatever it is. But there should be some movement on that side, as well as there should be some movement on keeping ourselves more secure. which I think would be the prime directive. Like, I think, in my opinion, we operate off trust. When you're at war, you attack the weak points of your enemy, whatever it be land, whether it be whatever the direction is. The fact that we have so many school shootings is proof that that's one of our weak points as far as defending what's important to us.
It's a gun-free zone, and it's
exactly.
Also,
and so now
precious jewels there.
The trust factor of that not happening has been gone, to be honest with you, at this point. And the younger the generations get, well, they always get younger, but the younger people are having guns. This is going to keep happening because they're easily swayed. You believe at 16, 17, something happens to you. Yeah, the world is over. So I think, like, fuck a resource officer at that point. Instead of putting all the people that are almost out of retirement or about to retire being cops into schools, put four heavily armed dudes at the school walking around. I don't care. Put 2 people at the gate or whatever it is with the metal detector at the 2 entries. Saying that there should be 1 entrance for a school is literally a hazard. Anybody who says single entry is not, that's not how schools are even supposed to be built at all. So I just think you just have to arm the school, not the teachers. I'm not saying give every teacher a gun. I'm saying if you can recognize authority when you see a cop and not be threatened by the officer having a gun.
Or if to speak on authority, an argument they've been having, which is two birds with one stone, is like you're saying, get cops or whatever you want in there, or veterans.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. But just now if you're okay with seeing a cop with a gun and it doesn't traumatize you, which some people can argue that it does. If you're okay with seeing a cop with a gun, you should be okay with seeing somebody who's there to secure the school.
A veteran that you would assume has training with said firearm or firearms in general.
We see when they did military visits with us for high school, military visits, or we go to like these little things.
Yeah.
You'd see them with their ARs. You see the military guys with their ARs. They may not have guns in it. They may not have bullets in it or whatever. But it wasn't a traumatizing sight for me to see a military guy. Mm-hmm. So I just think we have to actually invest in the security at this point because we cannot trust each other. You just can't.
I mean, it's impossible to get rid of all the guns. Like, there are more guns than there are people in the country. So that's kind of like the
is it like issue. Double or triple, isn't it?
Yeah, it's something ridiculous. The other issue is like, yo, how's it going? Thanks for tuning in. This podcast is sponsored by Angel Blinds, a local Atlanta area small business. Their blinds help you get a new look for your living room, to your bedroom, to your dining room. They even got custom kids blinds with their favorite superhero or princess. Use our promo code FDT. Our audience gets 10% off their first purchase. You can find them at Facebook at Angel Blinds or Instagram at Angel Blinds _ between Angel and Blinds. So check them out. The issue is so complex that it's difficult to approach. So, like, one of the things I heard is that universal background checks. Well, the kid who shot up this school had no prior crimes that would warrant not being able to buy an AR.
He passed the background check.
Yeah, he passed them. So he still did it.
But to that note, though, he did have a picture, I don't know if which social media, I think it was Facebook, of him holding a bag of dead cats. So it now wonders, like, how thorough is a background check? Does background checks not go through your social media to a degree?
No,
that's the other thing, though. You have to get the company to give that to the FBI, and
well, it was public.
That was bullshit and stuff like that.
It was the post was public. The privacy narrative, he only had it private to certain individuals. So if he didn't elect you to be like on that private list, you could see it.
Oh, so what you're saying is if you post something on social media, the platform itself should notify a system or database that you've been flagged, and maybe whatever that thing that was flagged would go into this is just me spitballing.
Would go Big Brother thing that like people would fight like tooth and nail against.
100%. But then the thing is, you can't fight tooth and like there's give and take. If we're talking about there being some balance, you can't say, okay, protect our guns, and then somebody give you a means of protecting your guns, and you say no. Because if the end result is you keeping your guns, but Big Brother saw if you posted your gun or not, I'm talking about, or posted something that would be, and the flag itself doesn't mean you're automatically flagged. The flag means, okay, if I have a thing, right, it goes into a little thing, and when they're doing my background check, that's when they check the flag to see what it is. It doesn't necessarily have to be, oh, he's been automatically flagged. Situationally, it could be applied to a lot of things. But you can't argue now all of a sudden. I'm not saying you, Doc, that, oh, no, big brother, but you're keeping your guns. Like, there has to be, like, you got to give something. Like, something got to shake. You can't just, I don't know. That's just my opinion.
Well, the other thing too is like that guy bought body armor. Like he was fully equipped. Like he was completely geared, and he had something like 1,000 rounds and like several mags for. I don't know if he had both ARs on him, but he definitely had one of them. So you can buy military grade weaponry, or maybe not like top of the line, but you can buy like some surplus stuff at 18 and totally do this stuff. The issue would have to be like, are you going to manage all of that? The whole AR thing, like. I've also heard something, and this to me actually sounds a little reasonable, if I'm being honest, where it's just like you raise the limit of buying an AR from 18 to 21 because people, grow a lot. And from 18 to 21, you can actually kind of see like if somebody's really going down a certain path. Like even these past two shooters, the one thing they shared in common was that they were both under 21. You could do it. The loophole for that, though, is remember that kid like several months ago whose parents bought him a gun and he shot up the school?
Mm-hmm.
And so that is a thing that might deter some people if you just have to buy it when you're at 21 and maybe you've grown a little bit more since then. Maybe life doesn't suck so much for you to want to do something so terrible. That's the only thing I've heard that I was like, I can understand that. Because I also don't think like you should get rid of assault rifles. The thing they're supposed to deter is the government from, an uprising or like a complete just shakedown. So and I think there's plenty of guns that like the government won't ever try to do that because then they fight militias. It's hard to find the middle ground. So I guess is what I'm trying to say. Because definitely like people want to keep their guns, especially the responsible owners. There's also got to be a way to keep it out of the people who are crazy's hands. And the big issue that's coming out of the Texas issue is one of the strongest arguments that the right has: get guns in the people of good hands. You know what I mean, or good people.
Mm-hmm.
But we saw the cops, like they're good people, man.
I was about to say that we have this unfortunate situation happen. The cops we hope are good people who would put themselves.
Yeah, they didn't do it.
Yeah,
they didn't act.
And you know what's crazy? Both times that the police were called, right? The Buffalo one, the operator told the lady, "Why are you whispering?" and hung up on her in the store. And then this one, you had the grandma call the police. You had the people from the funeral home call the police. They didn't pull up on the grandma who was shot in the head for over an hour.
I think the good thing would be for maybe the gun lobbyists to loosen the reins a bit and say like, okay, we'll bump it up to 21, and then the left to be like, okay, we'll let more armed guards into schools and stuff like that to protect the kids. I think that's the best middle ground from
What's
what we can currently do.
Armed guards or like a school shooting? Like I don't.
Yeah, at this point, right? Like they happen so frequently, and having armed guards at a school is just gonna be like, all right. It would be like Mexico, man. When you go to Mexico and you go to like public buildings and stuff like that, like there's armed guards with like ARs and stuff.
In New York, they are they got metal detectors, and they are there's police by them.
Oh yeah, I've seen that in movies when they walk into high schools and stuff like that.
in certain cities.
Honestly, I've only ever seen like New York schools in movies. I think what's the one where Samuel Jackson's a basketball Coach Carter? I think I saw it there.
And then Lean on Me with Morgan Freeman.
The only point I want to make is, I mean, I agree with all y'all. I don't think the solution is the extreme, which is ban all guns. That's just, one, in America, impossible, and two, in my opinion, incredibly stupid, because then you're just going to make it more possible for things like this to happen without any sort of pushback. Like
Response,
even though the police officers in that one situation should have responded, if you ban guns, then no one would have been able to respond except for them, and now we're slowly relying on them. Like, if those parents would have been able to get in, if they had a gun on them, they would have shot that shit up. Like,
any
should have and should have
that
been able
any
to.
of those cops have ever given anybody should be thrown out, because you don't get to be a dickhead and then be a coward. Like, you don't. Like, the trade-off is if you're gonna be a dick and write me tickets and all that shit for that.
Protect. You didn't serve, you didn't protect.
The trade-off is what are you doing then? You're just out here giving people tickets then.
Yeah. And then
that's what I was wondering too. Like, there's probably like an armed father who's just like, I'm gonna get my gun and I'm gonna run in there,
right?
I'm gonna do something like
straight up. And then the other side, I don't think is a solution either, which is I'm more on that side, but I know it's not what the other side wants. So I'm trying to find a way to for the common ground, which is just more guns, because I do think more guns, but how do we facilitate it in a productive way? And like you've pretty much said, I don't remember if Doc agreed. I think he did. I could be wrong. Which was some kind of security, be it officers there or veterans. I think veterans are a good idea. You give jobs now to veterans, and also you got protection out at schools. Win-win in my opinion. And I'm also, we talked about this before, like I'm okay, yeah, with more, I guess, in-depth background checks. Like if people really want a gun, they go through the background check. I went through a background check. I mean, it's an annoying process, but like you just go through the background check.
What about psyche eval? What do you think about that? That's just a question, not an opinion.
I honestly don't know much about psyche eval. I don't know what that entails, but I'm not really against it because I believe I'm a sane person and I don't do anything crazy. So I guess I'm not against it. Just depends on, I guess, who's doing it. I guess that's the argument from that side is who's doing all this evaluation to determine who and who can't have guns, because that's a slippery slope there now.
You know what they should add? References. You know how on your resume you have to put your high school and all that stuff? There should actually be a references thing, and it shouldn't be like by your choice. Like I'm just gonna list 3 references. Like that should be part of the school counselor's job. Like, has anything ever come up? If nothing comes up, nothing comes up. That's cool. If you never got in trouble, that's cool too. But like, there should be some start to that
young,
ledger,
so
and I think
it should be. And you want this, let's make sure your peers, your elder peers. We seen you worked at Quick Trip from 2004 to 2010. Training. He's been doing this with so and so. We've seen this and that. Blah blah blah. Like he's well competent and all that stuff. I don't really see anything wrong with that.
That also might be the workaround to licenses, because people are pretty against licenses. But with references, like you have to have like community, like
you've impacted your community some way, somehow. You interacted with people.
Yeah, I can see that. I'm willing to explore. I'm not against it. I don't see anything wrong with that. But the point I personally want to get to add on to this is I agree with everything y'all said, but one thing I think that bothers me is the exploitation of not specifically our politicians, but people in general of situations like this. I think we touched on it before we started the podcast. We were talking about what we were going to talk about today, and that was, it's understandable to obviously be impacted with this. Like, this is crazy. Like it's as this story specifically with the Texas shooting, as more information kept coming out, it was enraging to hear how this literally probably could have been prevented, and everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. I just found it so distasteful, the amount of politicians and people who aren't even politicians who came out and used this, they just pretty much inserted themselves, all the way from a politician to Beto when he interrupted that.
I hated that shit. I hate people who do stuff like that, because the fact is, yes, you can be enraged about something, but the moment you become aware of the audience, no matter what you're doing, you're acting. And so there's no part of that to me that wasn't acting when he went up there and he's mid-campaign running for something. And like, it's just all
it's obviously what he's doing. Like, to me, at least to me, I could be biased here. At least to me, it's very obvious he's positioning himself to sway voters. Like, and it's so obvious to me. And all the way from a politician to like an elected official, all the way to someone, I'm like to say normal, but just not a politician, which is Meghan Markle. She visited the did flowers and everything. It became, I don't know if it was intentionally or unintentionally, but nevertheless, the photos came out were pretty good photos of her at like laying down flowers for the kids. Mm-hmm. It's like, why do you need to be there? I don't know. It's like, I understand you probably did it the kindness of your heart, but the problem is by you being there, it became about you now. Like, you inserted yourself and it became about you instead of it being about the kids. Even out of your best interest to say, I'm here for the kids and here's me doing a nice gesture for the kids, for kids. Your actions are, you inserted yourself that you had no involvement in to say, look at me showing my support.
You know what's crazy about what you're saying? I completely agree, but we're becoming cynical to the point where your point is actually becoming almost annoying to hear too. I'm not saying that.
I understand though.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people saying, a lot of people are making memes of the people who are virtue signaling. So it's like I say a lot of people are like, oh, don't just virtue signal, do something about it. But that's virtue signaling. Like that's the same thing. Like you're saying, oh, everybody's just gonna do this and then we're gonna go back to normal and pretend nothing happened. But so are you. So therefore, you are also virtue signaling by saying stop virtue signaling. So it's becoming redundant. It's almost becoming like, and that's not necessarily your point, but it's becoming to a point where shit is so inauthentic.
There you
go. Even pointing out its inauthenticity is inauthentic. We're becoming dumb. Like, it's wild that we're gonna end up. We want to be the first one to say something or do something or or be so
and get credit for it.
Yeah, we're all contrarians now. So it's like we just want to be the first to say this thing and do this thing and the first one to make that observation. And because I made the observation, I'm real because I made the observation about things that other people were doing. But then eventually we just become the observers of observers, and we're just like we're just gonna be.
See, I don't think to speak to that. I think you're right, but only where I'd place I disagree is I don't think it's they want to be observers. They actually want to be involved. And I specifically, growing up,
I'm saying people making that observation will eventually be the observers, but people will be making the observation of people making the observation.
I guess there's two different. There's people who are the observers and they tend to talk more than anything.
Correct.
But then you have people who are observers and then they take action, but it's not a thought out action. It's just a reaction action.
Then they wouldn't be an observer, in my book.
I understand what you're saying, but the only point I'm trying to get to. Go on, Doc. Well, let me finish my point.
Okay, go ahead.
My problem with that is. It just, I guess, goes to with the disingenuousness. I'm struggling. The disingenuousness of it. Because, I don't know, it just goes to the emotional manipulation thing I just don't like. Like, you want to be... Oh, the action thing I said. I got it back now. We grew up, history, learning about protests. These great names. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, all these other people. I'll just name all the top
Gandhi.
names. Gandhi. You can name them all. This might be my bias, but this is my opinion. I've noticed when people come out to protest, they want to be the first person to make a change, or at least I want to start the new movement, the new civil rights movement. I want to be part of the new, and unfortunately, the new for example, with Black Lives Matter. She utilized the Black Lives Matter narrative. The situation. Boom, thank you. The situation to advance her pockets instead of being a genuine actual movement.
Correct.
We said this before in a podcast is we have now financially incentivized protesting, financially incentivized political activism. It's now a lucrative...
What the exact word was? I think we monetized...
activism, I think is the literal phrase. We monetize activism. I forgot what the conversation was about regarding, but we talked about this before, which is we now as a culture, as a country, have a monetized, it's part of capitalism, I guess, but I would say it's a bad side of capitalism personally. We have monetized it, and that brings about the wrong motivations, because now, I would argue a lot of these people, not all of them, but a lot of them, it's become obvious, for example, again, the Black Lives Matter one with whatever her name was, that people don't do these protesting and activisms with genuine intentions. They do it because they want to be known.
Internet activists.
And they want to make money. I want to become wealthy because by being well known comes with a level of... They
want to be associated to the cause. So if the cause is big enough, then their name associated to it will be big. But this is where I stand on that.
Hold on, let Doc...
Go for it, Doc.
Oh, I was just going to say, though, I think it also depends on the lens that you look at these things through. Because when all of like the shooter stuff was happening, I was looking at MSNBC and they were just fanning the flames for like the gun laws and stuff like that, and I was just like, damn, they're really like it diverts so much. Like you can tell they're using these situations as catalysts for whatever agenda they wanted to push. And so I would read the headline and I'd be like, I'm not reading that. And I would look at like a different headline to see what was the most like neutral. Like here's the presentation of information, here are the details and stuff like that. There were some things that I would be like, okay, let me see if this is sensational or not. But I would try to only listen to a little bit of it if it was like, new information. So I think looking at whatever presentations with that might deflate some of the perception that you have of like these people kind of, monetizing the situations, especially if it's like the news that's actually inflating what they're doing. Like if they just went 100%. And then like the news put a spin on what they did, then that's something to take into consideration. The reason why I was also thinking about this is because Biden actually flew to Texas, and like Biden's been against Abbott the entire time, and he hasn't been like, there's been so much like shit flung back and forth that he wouldn't even come to Texas. But for this situation, he actually flew in. And so we have that picture of him shaking Abbott's hand. And I was like thinking, damn, like, even if they both walked up to each other and were like, hey, fuck you, they probably both looked at each other and were like, we're in a shit show now. We got to deal with this. And so I don't think like him flying was any kind of like a personal, like, inflation of his career or anything like that. I think he generally showed up just to deal with the situation.
I mean, it's his job.
I mean, it's his job, so that one.
Yeah, he has to, for sure, yeah.
But to use Biden as an example to making the situation worse is him saying how 9mm should probably be banned. Bro, what? The most popular...
To the original point we were talking about the like you brought up the Black Lives Matter movement. I was thinking about it. Organization.
Yeah, I'm trying to
The organization. Most of the time with these organizations and stuff like that, like I said, they always start off grassroots. There's always a real reason. They're normally a reaction to something. Something happens or something has been happening where the idea of where they're coming from, it needs to be acknowledged most of the time. Like the women's movement, women didn't have equal pay or equal rights, or what they were fighting for a lot of stuff, equal space in sports, whatever it is, whatever your opinion of it is, they were fighting for that. And so the Black Lives Matter thing started after George Floyd. There was something that needed to be responded to. My question now is, yes, correct. So my question now is, to Doc's point of the media coming in and conflating things, at what point do we kind of attribute the destruction or those ideas not getting to where they need to go to the media? Because, for example, there's no movement or organization or thing that is perfect. There's no entity that is perfect. Why is it that, and this isn't just about Black Lives Matter, it's about anything, but I'm just kind of considering it now. Why is it that when something goes wrong, even if the genuine sentiment or the idea that's backing it is good, it could be protect the bees or something like that. But if we find out the guy that we're donating all the money to that's supposed to protect the bees is spending money on the Ferraris instead of the bees lose. The bees lose. Like, no, the sentiment itself is destroyed by the greed of the person attached to it. So I'm almost questioning, regardless of what happens with those people, why don't we as a society kind of integrate that change that needs to be done? Why do we accept that thing and let that idea be killed?
My answer to that is because we try to make everything federal. A lot of these problems, I think, not specifically local, but they can be better handled locally. And what I mean by that is some problems, like we'll keep the Black Lives Matter example. Obviously, Black Lives Matter affects the entire country because black people live in the entire country.
Right.
But there are certain areas where you can make a difference immediately and do that immediately instead of trying to do something. I don't use the what's
from the outside in, inside out.
Yeah, so outside in, but outside in. Yeah, you start right there. Like, what can I immediately do for like Jordan Peterson says, a perfect one. What can you do immediately for your family and your immediate surrounding? What can you do to help Black lives? Boom, I did that. Okay, now I can do that. I'm proficient in that and competent in that. Now what can I do for my immediate community, people, my neighbors? I did that and grow out from there. The problem is people want to go from me, family, to suddenly, boom, the entire country. Mm-hmm. It's like, there's steps to it. First, you got to understand where the problem is, where you reside, and solve that problem. And if you can solve that problem, this is how I solve this problem. Now let me see if I can use this method on a grander scale. It worked, but I had to change it because of X, Y, and Z. Now, because I did that with these adjustments, let me see if I can do it now in a grander. It's a growth thing. It's a step thing, but people don't want to do that growth in steps. They just want to jump right into it, which is... So I guess my point is go to my they
lose gas before they can make it out the atmosphere. Sure. So, like, sure. I get what you're saying. Okay, I get it. I can agree with that, actually. That's actually makes sense. But, yeah, I just always wondered that because it's not like these things shouldn't exist. Or these ideas shouldn't exist.
Because that's the problem. Like with Black Lives Matter's if Black Lives Matter started in a certain local area and that happened, the local community could have kept her accountable while also still supporting the movement. But the problem is because it became such a national thing, she became the face. And now, even though people have no association with these people involved with Black Lives Matter, they just know as Black Lives Matter. I mean, with that disassociation, it enabled them to label her all of Black Lives Matter.
Correct.
Her sins became Black Lives Matter sins.
Exactly.
It's a level of disassociation that you lose when you don't build up that foundation, in my opinion. That's why I don't believe in, to allude to my beliefs now when it comes to no federal anything.
Yeah. No, I agree with that.
No, I just think it draws also a healthy skepticism to be like, okay, what do I agree with most here? The sentiment or the herd? And then you can kind of draw your conclusions from that. That was actually something I applied to Black Lives Matter when it was happening. Because I remember listening to, what's that guy? I can't remember his first name, but his last name is Noir.
Colin Noir?
That guy, yeah. I remember listening to him, and he was talking about disassociation between, like, the organization itself and the sentiment, how you should put more value on the sentiment. And so when John kind of voiced it, I was just like, oh yeah, that was like a thought that guy raised. So I think moving forward, like with like modern media and everything, like all the stuff we're being thrown at each other, we need to have that level of skepticism.
Yeah, I agree.
Always.
I just think as Americans, we're used to the fast life, and therefore, because we're used to the fast life, we're used to fast results, immediate results, and we're just not used to patience. I think we need to adopt patience.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, I know.
America-
In America.
Yo, thanks for making it to the end. We really appreciate it and hope you all enjoyed the show.
Make sure you hit that subscribe button, that like button, and the notification bell to get notified when we post our clips.
Follow us on Twitter at PodcastFDT. Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok are all fake deep thinking. Check us out, please.
FDT. Peace, y'all.
Peace.